Welcome to Created Healthy. I'm Dawn Combs. It's a common idea that God gave us everything we need in nature, but do we believe it enough to walk that out in truth? Often the very same people who say this go looking for answers on how to use food and medicine from man-made sources. Everything man creates comes with a user's manual. Why would God be any different? I challenge you to join me in seeking revelation about our body, mind, soul, and spirit health by digging into His written word and in practicing pure science in the visible world of His creation. I don't think that we were designed to shy away from the tasks that are set in front of us. I don't think procrastination is part of our godly design. And ironically, I'm in 1 Samuel 22 through 25 today, and I am late in getting this podcast out because I was struggling with what I wanted to say and putting off having to just sit down and talk it through. I've done a lot of praying and a lot of thinking, and what I've come back around to is this notion that a lot of what we're seeing here in the just this messiness and anguish and depravity that I see where we're looking at David in this period of his life is really about him sort of running away from his problems, running away from his mission or the path that has been put in front of him, and at the same time still trying to stay close to God. So after he left Ahimelech and he's got Goliath's sword from the last reading, he goes to caves and he gathers his family, and he interestingly gathers a lot of people around him that would identify themselves as victims. He is gathering people who are in distress, that are discontented, that are in debt, people who maybe don't exactly fit into day-to-day Israelite good society, maybe who are struggling with the path that they're on and facing up to their issues. He is roaming around, and Saul is chasing him throughout this. Ahimelech actually gets killed because Saul finds out that he had allowed David to stop and eat and take the sword of Goliath. And so David feels very responsible. We see him in chapter 23 call for the ephod that he had with him. One of the sons of Ahimelech actually escaped the temple and brought that ephod to David. And so he calls for it and he's praying with it, and he's trying to seek guidance from God. So he is aware that he's trying to maintain his relationship with God. He's trying to ask for permission before he does things here. But he asks about whether the Philistines are going to, after he attacks, let me back up. The Philistines attack Keilah, and David goes out. He asks if he should attack them and rescue Keilah, and God says yes. So he goes and he does that. And while he's there, Saul now knows where he is because he's done this. And David very pointedly asks, is Saul going to come here? And God says, yep. And he asks if the people of Keilah will give him up to Saul. And God says, yep. And David takes it upon himself to run. He doesn't ask God. We don't see him then say, dear Lord, should I run? Should I take these people who are with me and get them out of harm's way? He doesn't ask that. And so God doesn't give the blessing on him running. And I see so much here where David, in initially running, he lied to Ahimelech, and now there's bad repercussions there. Ahimelech is killed, and along with a whole lot of other people, Saul killed 85 priests along with Ahimelech. There are all of these consequences because David he's acting insane to protect himself. He's lying to protect himself. And anytime we are running away from a purpose or something that has plainly been put in front of us, a request from God, it's going to require us to do a lot of mental gymnastics. It's going to lead us down a path that we are not meant to be on, and so we have to work to fit ourselves into it. And that means becoming somebody that we were not intended to be. The only people that really, really know that Saul is no longer anointed here is David and Samuel. Samuel anointed David. And when he did that, David was visited upon by the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit left Saul and enters David. David knows intimately that Saul is no longer the anointed king over Israel because Samuel has come to him and anointed him and told him, "You are God's chosen king." That is a path that he is not unaware of. He is fully aware of it. And he is further entrenched in that awareness because the Holy Spirit dwells inside of him. He is running from that path. I don't know what the destiny is here. Whether God had intended for David to face Saul and that Saul would die, that David would kill him by his own hands, whether there would be a showdown of some sort and Saul would step down. He would recognize that he is no longer being attended by the Holy Spirit. He's no longer favored by God. God has left him and entered David. I don't know, and we can't know because David ran. David ran from his appointed path. And I have to believe that while Samuel is alive here, had David faced this head on, had he stepped up and said, "Okay, God has put me on this path and I accept it, whatever it means. I know that God has me," and he wouldn't anoint me if I weren't going to be the victor here in whatever way that happens. And Samuel, being alive and having the history with the Israelite people, would have stood up and said, "Yes, Saul is no longer your anointed king. David has been anointed, and you as men must anoint him as well." Samuel and David would have collaborated, but here in 25, Samuel dies. And so David's path to accepting this role, while very difficult, he loves Saul as a father. He wants him to love him back. He is struggling with that. It was very easy. This really hard thing was a lot easier with Samuel alive. And already Saul has been delivered into David's hands when David is able to cut off a portion of Saul's robe instead of killing him. And he uses the excuse that to his men, to keep his men from killing Saul, that Saul is God's anointed and we can't kill him. But he knows that to be a lie. He knows that Saul was once anointed, but anointed means that the Spirit is with him, that God is favoring him and guiding him and working through him. And David knows that that's not the truth. So I think what we're seeing throughout these chapters are the consequences. We know over and over again that God allows us to have free will, and that includes being scared of our destiny, if you want to call it that, the path that he has set before us. And sometimes it isn't very clear. We have to pray a lot about whether or not what we see is the path that God is truly putting us on. But man, David just doesn't really have that excuse. He knows that he's been anointed over Saul by God. He knows that the Holy Spirit is with him. And yet he is still running from this path and all of the consequences that are happening that other people are paying. And meanwhile, Israel is paying because he hasn't stepped into the role that God had ordained him to step into. I think it's a really important model for us to look at and say, we weren't designed to put things off. The saying, "Don't put off what you can do today to tomorrow. And I say this, don't even know the saying apparently. The idea is that you have to face things right away. The things that we don't face right away become uglier and uglier and deeper and deeper and further away from God, because we have to contort ourselves and we have to change ourselves to be able to resist God's will, to go a different direction. It is sin. It is looking at God's face and saying, I'm going to go my own way instead. And sin has its penalties. We have to look at David's life here and see that there are consequences to us not owning up to the things that he puts in front of us, that we need to just step into and have the faith and the trust and just get it done. I pray that God is blessing you today, and that the things that are in front of you that you've been putting off, the things that you know better, that you have been asked to do, I pray that you have the courage to turn and face into them and trust that God has you in his hands, and that you may, depending on how long you've put them off, we see this in health issues, right? Depending on how long we've not faced up to the thing that we know we're going to have to deal with at some point, there will be consequences. There will be a healing crisis that we have to walk through. Things may be really uncomfortable. We may become more sick. We may estrange a loved one. We may have to deal with that uncomfortable emotional encounter that we've been putting off. But I promise you that we are not designed to avoid those things. We are designed to turn right into that uncomfortable moment, right into that illness, right into that conflict, and trust that God has us right where he wants us, and he will carry us through. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with a friend. And I'm always interested in hearing what God is laying on your heart. So drop me a rating or review, or join the conversation on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube at Dawn Combs Really.